Yesterday morning around 10 a.m., Heather, the victim of the homicide, came into our office located on the third floor seeking to talk to a detective about some current cases that she's been filed with the police department recently. These cases were mostly for criminal mischief to vehicles, I believe a window to a residence, misdemeanor offenses. She was put in touch with a detective. They went through the cases that were involved, took statements. Heather provided written statements to the detective. During the conversation with the detective, the suspect called wanting to talk to Heather. The detective, at Heather's request, talked to the suspect, Joe. Is that Joe or Jose?
Jose.
Talked to him on the phone. Jose wanted to come in to the police department and give his side of the story, the events that have transpired over the recent days. Approximately an hour later, hour and a half later, Jose did come to the Corpus Christi Police Department. He was read his rights under Miranda, and he voluntarily gave a statement to the detective outlining the events on his side of the story. Shortly after that, Jose left the police department, and Heather had already left the police department at that time. One thing I do want to note is that while Heather was here, which we do with all our victims of domestic violence that come into our office, we have them meet up with a crime victims advocate. And like the chief said, we have a counselor who actually talked to Heather yesterday. And what they do is when they have these meetings is they discuss the options, safety plans, things that we can do, services we can offer to the victim to assist them with getting out of this horrible situation. The one thing I do want to really note is that there are a lot of things out there that we can do as a community to work together, but it takes more than just the victim in family violence. It takes everybody working together, whether it's your family members, your brothers, your sisters, your loved ones, to help each other, because it's a very difficult situation to be in that spot.
Some of the frustration victims have is, hey, the legal system's not working fast, we're not doing this. But the law not only gives us authority, but it restricts our authority. So the system works in a very methodical way. So the reason we reach out to social services, the reason we work with so many other community partners, is so we can have some immediate effect. And so victims need to understand that when we start suggesting you leave your home or your job, it's for immediate safety, not because the legal system needs that.
Right. And protective orders.
Protective orders is a legal process to try to gain protection for a victim of violence. But that system also, we can work faster, but it requires a certain level of violence. So a protective order can't be criminal mischief, for instance, will not reach a level where somebody can get a protective order. It requires violence at a certain level. It is issued by a judge, and so it has to meet a certain level through the process for someone to gain a protective order. Protective orders are powerful tools, and we use them all the time, and they certainly do work for many victims. But there is a process to get them.
Can I touch on one thing? Just to follow up with the captain, in order to get an emergency protective order, there has to be an arrest made. So if you have an arrest, then we file for emergency protective orders. Our advocates file for those. But to get the protective orders that Captain Bowers is talking about, it is a lengthy process. They have to come in, file an application, then you get a court date. And that would be for the permanent 2-year protective order, which is the follow-up to usually the emergency protective order.
The most powerful order is a protective order in protecting someone, because that gives us the legal right to arrest. Other orders from judges, a report is just written, it goes to the judge, and the judge decides what punishment comes from violating their order. A protective order, and most people just get them confused. They just don't know the difference in different kind of orders from a judge. A protective order is the tool. That's what people really want when they come in here as victims of family violence. A judge can issue an order for anything. They can go to a judge and request a restraining order, peace bond, things like that. But that's through a judge, and that we can't arrest on. It's not nearly as powerful a tool for family violence as a protective order. If there's an arrest for family violence, we can do an emergency protective order, and we can get that done immediately, because they will do that through the magistrate at the CDC or the county jail, and that way the person will be served. That's a 60-day emergency protective order. And so that gives them the time to go through the process to get a 2-year permanent protective order. So it takes the 60 days, it takes the time to go through the court and get all that done. But if there's no arrest made, like in this case, there's no arrest for violence made, then it wouldn't meet the criteria for either order, for an emergency protective order or a full protective order. That's what we're discussing. They have hard choices because when you're a victim of family violence, your choices are to get yourself out of that situation. And there's many services, the police department will be one of them, that are willing to help with that process, because as the chief mentioned, money's an issue, children are an issue, this is my home is an issue. There's so many there's so many issues, but at some point the question is what's all that worth? Is it worth my life? And so it's getting out of the situation that is the answer in some cases. And quite honestly, even when you start talking about a protective order, it's a piece of paper. So that's great if their intent isn't to kill you. If their intent is just to go, we can go get them. But it's of the piece of paper isn't going to stop somebody from killing you.
We can't say it enough. If you're a victim or you're a family member of a possible victim, you need to be proactive in taking the proper steps. You know, sometimes when we're in situations like this, it's very emotional. It's hard to think clearly. But if there's someone that is seeing another person, a friend perhaps, or a family member that needs our help, we need them, you know, to be reached out to. We need them to be convinced that there are options out there, and we need to empower them to take the proper steps toward being safe.